Women's Prison Podcast, where we are live on the rec yard every Wednesday night. Hey, everybody. It is Wednesday night, and we are on the Rec Yard Women's Prison Podcast. I'm Marci Marie.
I'm Toonchi.
Toonchi, you just floated right in as our little startup video was rolling. So nice to see you, friend.
But aren't you proud of me that I'm here on time, ready, dressed, excited, and here with you? Aren't you excited for that?
The door's closed behind you, so you don't have to get up and run and do that. You don't have to get up and move a Taylor, or you're not getting a snack, or
no, I'm here. I'm queer, and I'm ready to do
it. Where's your coffee?
Okay, so I'm drinking Liquid Death. It is carbonated water, and it's kind of helping me replace the desire for sodas. It's been really useful in that.
Okay, well, and this is not a sponsored ad. If you would like to sponsor our podcast, please reach out to us.
Liquid Death is so refreshing.
Yes. Oh man, welcome in everybody. We have a pretty good lineup tonight. First of all, Department of Corruption's coming in hot, reminding me to remind you to hit that like button, hit that follow button. If you're not subscribed to our channel, please do so. Please share this live. You guys chat it up. This is an interactive show. Our show is about community and talking to you guys. We want to know what you're thinking. And I moved my camera tonight, so when you see my eyes are like, I was trying to be cuter, and I've messed it all up, and I can't go back now until next show. So this is what we're dealing with. You might be listening to us, and then you don't have to see me looking.
They don't have to see the curtain kind of breezing like there's an apparition and a ghost behind you.
Oh, we're so glad to see you guys. We're talking about what if we didn't have prisons? What would that look like? What would a world without prisons look like? And I think what kind of sparked this topic was the Federal Bureau of Prisons shutting down one of their facilities, one of their infamous facilities in California, FCI Dublin. And we'll get into all of that. I'm really excited for that. Before we get into that, and this is not smooth, girl, because I was not on the right page. Toonchi, let's do a weekly recap. Toonch, what did your week look like, honey?
Girl, what did my week look like? It's just well, this weekend we had our local Lioness hangout at a really cool coffee shop. There was a good group of us there. I enjoyed that very much. I enjoy hanging out with everyone. Talked about reentry and did a lot of socializing. And then me and Lori went to go see Madonna. She didn't start till 10:30, and I was about to pass out. I said, Lori, I am fixing to go to sleep. There's some lady that was very drunk next to me that had to be taken out halfway through the show. And then the rest of the work week has just been me trying to cram anything in before I take off to DC this weekend for Just Leadership.
Oh, I'm muted, but not now. It's been busy already this week for sure. And I saw the pictures from you guys' Central Texas meeting, and it looked great. It had a good turnout. I'm so glad you had good conversations and came up with some game plans and solutions for your area. That's really exciting. I'm trying to think what my week was. I don't even know. This is so ridiculous, but I am going to DC. Brittany gets to go next week. We're super excited for that, for the Free Her conference or rally. And El Paso is, remember I told y'all last week how it got all crazy and I missed my flight and then I
Because the
didn't
Coles.
go. So they called this week and needed me on Tuesday, which I'm supposed to be going to DC on Tuesday. And we were like, looking at flights and craziness, and it was going to be like me leaving Tuesday night and them flying me to DC and a 13-hour layover at
Oh my
my
God.
airport here. Like, it was such a crazy mess, but we finally figured it out how to get it done. Me and the awesome lady at the public defender's office there. And then they called today and they're like, we're so sorry, it's not going to be this week, the judge pushed it back a week.
Woo!
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Right.
Don't be sorry. I mean, it was just so just kind of planning with that. Hey, y'all, my sister-in-law is about 33 days sober, and she's been on like 5 job interviews so far, and that's my nephew's mom, and she's just doing real well. Major shout out to her. So we've been really just trying to support her, and that's really what we've been going on this week. So
Well, tell everybody what the Free Her rally is. They might want to know what that is. That we will be there together.
we
For
will be
that.
there together, and just for that about 10-hour span when Brittany thought she was going to be in DC without me and she knew you were going to be there. She was really excited, almost too excited, frankly.
Because she knows that her and I live our best golden lives.
Yes, it was going on. It was going on. A lot of people are answering our question in the chat, and I do want to tell you what the Free Her conference was, or the Free Her rally. So, Shamika, we're going to get right back to that, answering that. But so it is by the National Council of Formerly and Currently Incarcerated Women and Girls, and I might have jumbled up their name, and shame on me if I have, because uh, they're a huge group, an advocacy group. However, I'm just kind of stuck here in my little statewide stuff, and so I don't interact with them a lot, and I'm just now learning about them, and they're powerhouses, man. They're a massive organization, and this rally is a huge, hundreds and hundreds of people in DC, a march, and then a rally. They'll have some speakers, and you chime in anytime that you notice I'm fumbling this up. Toonch.
I swear sometimes I hope that people don't think that we're drunk when we come on here.
No, it's just honestly,
Oh my God,
if
we are
we
sober
recorded at
like
6 a.m., you and I would be on point.
we really would.
Neither one of us operate well in the evening time. Like after we've been in meetings all day, it's over. It's over with.
It's done. But no, you're doing a good job. They do have a very long name, but they are the national organization that works on incarcerated girls and women's issues. Now, what they will tell you, and you can read on their website, is we don't believe in reform. We're here to abolish prisons. So they're very they are exactly what we're talking about tonight. Their approach is no reform. It's abolish. And their Free Her national campaign is just that, ways to talk about advocacy, awareness, and shifting public opinion away from incarceration into what is very dear to us and our mission, which is ending the incarceration of women and girls and closing jails and prisons. So it's a big national campaign that everybody will be there celebrating and raising awareness. I'm super excited about it. Be really cool.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. Their website is flashing underneath. What is that? Is that the statement, or is that their website?
That's the Free Her page that talks about the Free Her campaign. Let me give you their overall website here.
Well, you guys just cut off that Clemency Works for the overall website. You want me to do it for you? I'll do it. Yeah. So you guys can visit their website and see what they're doing on a national level. They're doing important work, and their statement behind the closing of the FCI Dublin women's prison in California is kind of what sparked our topic. I want to play a video because my good friend Morgan Godwin, our good friend, she did time. She was actually housed at that unit for 2 years, and she breaks down the reasons why they're closing. So let's look at that. You tell me if you can hear it and everything. If you can't.
The correctional officers at FCI Dublin, a federal prison in the Bay Area of California, where I served 2 years of a 5-year sentence, were so incapable of stopping to SA the women in their custody that the entire prison is closing. So far, 8 employees of the Bureau of Prisons, including the warden, the chaplain, and 6 COs, have been indicted, and yet I know that there are even more. The Lieutenant Putnam, who threatened to send me to the hole for publicly talking about the conditions within the prison, called me a year ago because he watched one of my TikToks and was now tasked with doing internal investigations. The same people who participated in the cover-up of what they called Grape Club for years were then tasked with investigating themselves. The former director of the Oregon Department of Corrections, Colette Peters, took over the Bureau of Prisons under the Biden administration. The culture is so rotten to the core. When you talk to women who did time there in the 90s, they say that nothing has changed, to the fact that they are actually closing this prison. And the problem is there are very few women's prisons. So now these West Coasters and Mexican women from Tijuana and Mexicali are going to be sent thousands of miles from home and never be able to get a visit because they can't stop raping people.
So I, first of all, just from personally knowing Morgan, you guys, I'm sure you could hear the background noise in her video. She stopped what she was doing. When she saw that wasn't some scripted TikTok. She stopped what she was doing. She put a backdrop up and she recorded her video. And then the way that she was speaking, she's pissed. And rightfully so.
Yeah.
And rightfully so.
Morgan's a very gentle, very laid back soul, and to hear the anger in her voice shaking with rage. I mean, Marci. They had to close an entire federal prison because they could not get the staff to stop sexually assaulting the women in their custody.
Yeah.
How bad must it be that the only other option is to close the facility? And I love that we're going to the Free Her rally with the National Council, because they had a bold ask this week, which was to give clemency to all the women in that facility. They have survived torture. Don't punish them more by sending them, like Morgan said, because the federal prison, they try to put you close to in your area, but you could be anywhere in the country. So they're going to send these women even further away. Don't punish them anymore. Send them home. And I feel like that is the right answer. And it leads into the discussion of abolition, right? Closing facilities, ending the incarceration of girls and women and all people.
And that is a bold ask, but their statement and what Morgan was saying, these women, it was spot on. They're going to be harmed even further. Now they're going to be moved hundreds of miles. Not, in Texas, our prisons are spread out far, but we're not 20 hours from our loved ones, and now we're talking about quite literally could go all the way to the East Coast.
Well,
Yeah.
I feel like it is, it's still a punishment. They're still being punished. It is, because what do you and I talk about? What are our friends always talk about? How do you punish the women on the inside when they report something? You move them out of their dorm, you move them out of their job, you move them away from their community, right? That's the ways that they used to punish us, a very informal, quiet punishing. And so to be moved and transferred, and we've talked about a lot of this in emergencies, is an absolute shattering of your mental health. So these women are already literally surviving day to day sexual assault, and now it's the informal punishment of transfers and moving and being moved away from the women. See, because now that family unit, because I can only imagine, well, I can't, I know, because in the Texas prison, in the youth prisons, we were bonded to, you think that our group is bonded, that group of girls I grew up with, one of them could call me today. You know what I mean? And so, because you're surviving something really intense and horrific together, and then to suddenly be ripped away from each other, not just your family that is close by, but each other, into these far-flung areas. And I just, that's not the answer is closed prisons, right? But I feel like this is the easier answer, actually, for the government, for all the wrong reasons. We just won't deal with it.
Well, it's avoidance, because they couldn't take control of their staff. They're avoiding that problem completely just by shutting it down. And the Right Cause Urban Youth Conservation is on watching. Hello, this is a great organization in the DFW area. And they're saying, yes, send them home. Yes, send those ladies home. They are victims of crimes. I mean, I think that people are quick to say, well, that don't go to prison. And even when we're talking about sexual assault, we get those kind of comments, folks. But the fact is, just because someone ended up on a path that led them to incarceration does not then give the state agency, the federal agency, permission to commit crimes against them.
Yeah. Well, and these are what we talk about, right? Prisons, carceral settings are breeding grounds for violence. It is. I mean, when you have an imbalance of power and you have someone who doesn't have any, right? I mean, it's just a petri dish of violence, of disaster, human disaster, natural disasters. And this is a prime example of it. I mean, we see it in our own systems here, in our adult prison, but certainly in our juvenile system. I mean, just decades over and over and over and over, and we just refuse to get rid of it, because the word abolish is so
It's
far
scary.
left, scary, whatever, liberal, and it terrifies people, and to not embrace it, to me, is lazy, right? Because we can, as a society, envision a new way, a creative, healing way that balances accountability, with restorative justice. Well, how lazy and simplistic and crude and elementary of us to rely on something that fosters and breeds shit like this.
Rebecca says, she's watching on YouTube. Thank you for watching. She says, I can never understand how it is that the children of prisoners, incarcerated individuals, do not have the right to communicate or see their parents, that there's no government obligation to facilitate kids seeing their parents. And that's just another way. That's another way that prisons harm our communities, by tearing apart families and not actively working towards making sure that those bonds stay intact or grow stronger even. And that's just right. That's just another way that not only now do we have an incarcerated individual, now we are raising angry, hurt kids. It's just that's how easy it is for that generational incarceration to just kind of fall into place. And we see that often.
Yeah. And people might ask, why can't that be mandatory? Well, why wouldn't it be, something that could be, it's mandatory that the child see their parent? Because let me tell y'all something. When you are incarcerated, you become the property of the state. You are no longer a person. I'm just going to put it in very, you can have all the programming and all the, I'm never saying that I don't appreciate good conditions and good programming and making the best of the horrible system that we have. I think our approach to abolition does embrace reforming conditions. It's too important. But we have a long-term strategy, and strategies can be different than other groups, and that's okay. But because it traces back to the origin of carceral settings, which is slavery. So the people who are convicted of crimes are property of the state, like property, like this blanket, like this chair, like a horse, like property. So why would you have rights to your children? You don't exist anymore as a mom. Let's keep it real. You don't. Your labor is slave labor. Anything that is done in labor, Marci, under the duress of punishment. What do we call that?
That's what the 13th Amendment says. No more slavery unless someone is convicted of a crime.
Because you're property then. You belong to the state. And,
right.
I've told people back in the day when women would self-harm, now what did we always say though? Hey, is medical going to make your bond? Because if medical doesn't make your bond about you self-harming, I have seen it with my own eyes. Women get cases for destruction of state property for self-harm.
They can get cases and I don't know that that's still policy in place because this was the beginning of my incarceration. But if you got hurt, even if it wasn't intentional, even if you weren't in some kind of possibly you were in mental health crisis and you harmed yourself, that's one scenario. But another scenario that you can get that case is if you're playing basketball at rec and twist your ankle.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality of it. That's
unsafe act, destruction of state property. I think sometimes people hear us and they're like, I posted something on Twitter about the tasers. It came straight from our mail, Marci, several pieces of mail about how they're using tasers now. And it sounds inflammatory. It sounds fantastical. What was reported to us as an advocacy organization. But there's no doubt in my mind that it happened.
No.
There's not. And people get mad and they're like, oh, y'all are, it's like just this, it just can't be. It just can't be like that, what you're saying. Yes, it is.
Well, it's hard for people to hear, Toonch. People don't want to believe that in this day and age, in this progressive country, that these kind of things are happening. People don't want to believe it. And it's easier to blow reports like that off. But the fact of the matter is, not only is our organization made up 100% of formerly incarcerated individuals, but we have 300 plus members on the ground, so to speak, behind those prison walls right now that stay in touch with us. And when we're hearing the same reports from 15 different people in different dorms, in different pods, about an incident, the incident freaking happened. We don't take one letter that maybe somebody was having a bad day, or maybe somebody has a bone to pick with somebody. We take every letter seriously, but we don't go with one letter and run with it. But when there's several, we know things are happening. And in the same point, we get letters about conditions of confinement across the state. Every single unit that's not air conditioned. We heard from our members all summer long last year about people dying, people passing out, it's happening, but people don't want to admit. It's hard to admit that we're here letting that happen.
Yeah. And so then that's the block, the first block to prison abolition work, to shutting down jails and prisons and envisioning a new way, an effective, meaningful way to talk about and deal with violence and mental illness and addiction and all the things that get thrown into these horrible places instead of, being effectively treated. And until you can see that, until you can see the people in those cages and buildings and concrete buildings that are 130 degrees, or the woman that's getting tased because the warden said, tase that hoe, right? Taser, just, how, baby, if they're not using chemical agents anymore and they're using tasers, and now you ain't got to clean up that chemical agents, I can see it popping off all the time, right? Because we're property. And I saw something else that the prison posted. It got under my skin, Marci, because we've been doing a lot of work about emergencies and how that affects our mental health, especially as women. And they, remember the fire? Remember the fire last year? It was real bad at one of the men's units. And they said, but with all the help, they saved the facility and we're working to restore the clock. And I was like, this is what I was talking about when I said that I felt less of a human being and that furniture and livestock was more important to me, because this post was celebrating that they saved the facility, not the people, the facility and the historic clock, because those buildings mean more to them than the fucking people inside of them. And that's the truth. Go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking how that extends out into our society, because so many folks out here have this mindset, this very black and white way of thinking, that if you go down this path, if you find yourself on this road, and it doesn't matter what put you there, it doesn't matter that your mother sold you to a drug dealer at 5 years old and you lived on the streets as a teenager and have mental health. None of that matters. What matters is, you ended up committing a crime that landed you in prison, and now you're disposable. People feel that in their spirit. There are people out there that comment on my pages every day that believe if you somehow landed yourself in prison, then your life no longer matters. And there's enough of that mindset that keeps that culture of oppression live and popping and thriving.
Uh-huh.
So I think, Toonchi, I remember, and since we had Morgan's video on here, I almost wish that I had pulled that one off of her page. I would have had to scroll through, but the first time I met her was at a prison TikToker gathering. We were in Pennsylvania. It was not last year, it was the year before last. And she said, I think she did a video, and it was like, I think people think because we're on here talking about how bad prison is and how much needs to change, that they assume that we're abolitionists. and she passed the video around. It's like, what do you think? Are you an abolitionist? And the majority of the people in that group who had been severely harmed by the prison system were not, because the question is, if not prison, then what? Because there are times that people need to be separated from their communities in order to keep themselves safe and their communities safe. So if we're here talking about no more prisons, then where does that lead? What happens?
Yeah. I mean, that's once you can walk people, let's say they slowly progress through the thought process of, wait a minute, okay, these are human beings. Wait a minute. If they're not treated humanely and they're treated horrible, then, well, of course they're going to come out even more damaged, and it's just going to create this vicious cycle. Oh my God, maybe this is terrible. 130 degrees. These are horrible facilities. It doesn't matter how nice they are, and you progress people up, because I've seen legislators that were more conservative when we were talking about, closing youth prisons, because of that long, terrible history. Okay, I see what you're saying. I get it. Yeah, but what now? What do we do with the worst of the worst? Which my response is, I was the worst of the worst. And I'm going to use my own life as an example, right? Now, I acknowledge I had different privileges that helped in certain ways, right? But let's look at that. Well, 20 years, Marci, 18, something like that, of the same type of treatment or punishment model. You got to act right, or you're going to stay in these prisons forever. Well, I don't know how. You can tell me. I don't know how. It was the 4 year after I got out of prison, the therapy, the person-centered, strength-based, community-led treatment that I got, that I'm stable. This is the longest I've ever been free and stable. And that was just a few short years of therapy and treatment in a very strength-based, positive, restorative way in my community that worked when all these years never did. Almost 20 years. Same old shit over and over and over. Punishment, threat of punishment. So you can take the worst of the worst, the one that was so violent and out of control, and here we are now. So that is my example that I give to them. And I think the greater discussion is kind of embodies that.
So are you envisioning then some kind of non-carceral setting, but still confined? Is that, I mean, if they're in crises, if they're a direct threat, I mean, how does that look?
Well,
Not
and
a jail cell.
it's been a hard conversation with other abolitionists when I've said we have to. This is where I was further along in my journey, yes, but closer to the crisis, like you're talking about, when I was 15, right, or when I was locked up again as a younger adult. Closer to those crises, you're right. I would have hurt somebody else in a heartbeat. I was not well. And so what do you do then? And I think the discussion is, what does a safe, secure setting look like for people in crisis? Well, we think that know and experience that it is not carceral. It is not what prison is. It is not that. We know what it's not.
Right.
We also don't want to go on the edge of, because I've worked a lot in my other disability work. We don't want it to be institutionalization either, because those are some pretty horrific stories too. How do we do this that is not institutionalized by the state, and more of a safe, secure setting within community, without law enforcement, without restraints and the government and oppression. What does that look like? I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers, right? But we know what it doesn't look like, and we know what hasn't worked.
We for sure know that the current system is not keeping our communities safer. We keep locking people up. Our crime rates are not going down. If prisons kept communities safer, then the country with the highest incarcerated population per capita would have a very low crime rate. And that's not factual at all, right? That's not what's happening.
Right. Well, I mean, honey, if the death penalty was the deterrent, we'd have no crime in the state of Texas. It has not worked. And there is this, I don't know what the psychological term is, but have you ever seen the Money Pit? It's an old 80s movie with Tom Hanks, and I
have
very
seen the Money Pit.
It's so cute and funny, but there's a psychological premise to that. It is a real thing that the more people invest in an idea and a process and the more money they put into it, it can be an absolute Duke fest. Okay. Like, oh my God. And they just pour more money into it. They pour more money into it. It's like my dad was restoring an old, like 1940s car one time. And I remember him finally saying, I'm so tired of this piece of shit. Because he just kept putting money into it, but he could not stop, because there's something about, it's what we do in our bad relationships, right? We just keep trying harder and harder because I'm already invested. And it's really hard to get human beings to pull away from that, even though it's a money pit.
Well, for Texas example, just being a very punitive state, we have sold our citizens on the idea of this tough on crime state, this tough on crime, big punishment is what works. We've lied to the population and told them, this is what needs to happen and needs to happen. So then it would really require, the state coming back with their tail between their legs saying, well, as it turns out, harming people further and traumatizing them, it's not working, and that's not happening.
Oh, right. Well, because like you're saying, is the state, we see it when people's cases need to be overturned, and it's clearly an injustice, and the state made a mistake. Okay, well, you made a mistake. Correct it. And they just dig their heels in, right? Because I don't want to be wrong. I've already invested. I'm not going to shake my reality, my paradigm. And it's like, I feel like society and citizens would respect the government more, the state more, if they were accountable and clear and honest, right? Like, it's the same difference if I hurt your feelings, which has happened. I'm sorry, right? It's very different if I know that I've hurt your feelings, I've made a mistake with you, and I'm like,
oh well,
God, and here's why I did it. And
you should have done this.
You shouldn't have done this, right?
Yeah.
If you hadn't acted
okay. All those ladies in FCI Dublin that were getting raped, sorry about your luck. Shouldn't have gone to prison.
Right.
Shouldn't have gotten arrested. Randolph Adams, I see you in the comments. I love you. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that. I'm not posting it on here because I'm not sure that you want that on the big platform, but I see you. And Rebecca says the money. And we do know that prisons are big business. There are lots of large corporations making mega bucks off of the prison industrial complex.
Sure. The state itself, right? The state itself. And so it's an industry. It is just that, And I just think that I remember when I feel like sometimes I'm that old man in the room that tells the same story. It's like, oh, here goes Grandpa telling that story again.
Old Pappy.
Oh, Pappy. Here go Pappy Toon. Here we go. No, but, I just remember testifying against a youth justice bill that would have slowed down the kids going to the youth prisons. They're terrible. They're pissing in jars. This will slow them down going. And I said, this is the best Texas has got. This is the best we can do. And we know all this horrific shit is happening. Wow. It's not good enough. And I understand incremental things, but I more and more, and I had a really tough conversation this week about what is useful incremental changes in our systems, and what is the state throwing us breadcrumbs to make us feel like they're listening when really they're just appeasing us for a little bit. And
Right.
when we're moving into a time, I think, Marci, that our society is, for large majority of all oppressed, marginalized community, it's going to be a very dangerous time for us. And so breadcrumbs are not enough.
What's happening is these folks that have been oppressed and traumatized, and I think that in the past, people get out of prison and are so shook that they put it all behind them. I even have friends that I did time with and were very close to during our incarceration that message me privately and say, "Oh, girl, I don't have any friends from prison on my social media. Yeah, I'm on Facebook, but I don't talk about prison. Nobody knows I've been." We'll get to advocating for a certain thing and I'm like, "Oh, this one person I know went through this very specific thing and I need to get her and maybe she'll tell her story." She's like, "Girl, I don't want people at work to know I've been in prison. I'm not doing that. I'm not. I'm not." And then I even I don't talk to anybody from prison. Like, I'm just messaging you because I see you, girl. Good job. But I don't even talk to anybody. All that's behind me. Because it's really hard to face very traumatic things. So what's happening now, we're starting to empower each other, men and women, and on the inside, something's got to give,
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, and if you're going to throw breadcrumbs at us, then we're just going to ask for everything. I don't know. Maybe that extremity to the state will make other people sound more moderate. Maybe that's a tactic. I don't know. But, advocacy is not just about what can you actually accomplish. It is for what it does to you. It's for what it means to you, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, in our state, there's so little that I feel like currently we can do. So the payoff then is what it does for us internally, to our spirits, to the people incarcerated spirits.
And no matter, it lessens the roughness of the road, those coming behind us. That even if we're taking a lot, and goodness sakes, the people ahead of us that took even way more, there's something to that too. Well, you talked about our organization in particular. Yes, in our mission statement is to end the incarceration of our community, which is women, girls, and gender expansive individuals, because we have to fine tune that so that we can be most effective. We don't believe men belong in prison either, but our particular group is that community. And then it also is to end the devaluing, right? So you talked about what is it before then? I mean, prisons aren't going to shut down next week, but this summer, prisons aren't going to shut down this summer, but this summer people are going to be roasting and having heat-induced seizures and passing out and losing their lives in Texas prisons. So what do we do until then?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have to work on those things that feel reformist. And, I understand the idea that I don't want to do anything to bolster the system and to make it a more well-oiled machine, right? But what I do know is, like you said, being in Texas for sure, hobby's not going to close down in 2 years. I mean, what a grand vision for one day, right? But Lane Murray's not going anywhere this summer. So I think, though, our advocacy as abolitionists, it always circles back to, and I think some other advocacy groups, I think that's what we did last year when we were talking about this stuff, is like, okay, but one of our asks in our statement, if you remember, was to close facilities, not just to put in tempered air and 65 to 85. One of our asks that I didn't see anybody else ask for was to close prisons. There you go, right? Like, so I think that's the part that we just have to keep doing, is that no matter what when we talk about higher education, what needs to be better for women, it needs to be more equitable. It needs to have real teeth to it. It can't just be for show stuff. And by the way, this program is more effective when people are in prison. So we should close facilities and do higher education out here, right? Like, no matter what it is, we keep coming back to, yeah, that's great, wonderful, but this is not really fully going to be effective until it's not in a carceral setting. And people get pissed off at me, I think, Marci. I think they probably get pissed off at you too. I think it's just harder because, you're so sweet. And I look maybe like a little angry old man.
You're somebody's mean grandpappy.
Oh, here comes this. No, but yeah, probably. But people do get frustrated, I think, with us because we seem like we're, yeah, wonderful. This is happening for the ladies on the inside. Great. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's still kind of fluff and it's still surface, and you're not going to distract us with a bunch of fucking look at sleight of hand stuff. I don't care what slick promotion you do of these programs, these feel good stuff, or, oh, we've put in a little air condition here. Yeah, at the end of the day, these women need to be outside of those settings for any of the programming to work, So I think it's just always circling back to that for sure.
I was looking on Instagram right now while you were talking. Not that I wasn't paying attention.
Honey, I'm used to it. Y'all, can I say something in the middle of this very serious conversation? What Marci did to me last night, which was, I could have crawled under this desk.
Yes.
We were having a training that we have every week, and
it was an important training that from a very respected.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And I was a little impatient. I'm not going to lie to you. And when we first hopped on, everybody had their cameras off but me. And instead of being patient and waiting, I texted everyone and said, well, are we going to participate? So everybody turned their cameras on very politely, and everybody answered. Then Marci came on and said, well, I guess since Toonchi has texted me and asked me if I'm going to participate, I guess I'll turn my camera on right now, even though she knows the baby needs a bath and I have things that I'm doing currently right at this moment. I said, oh my God. And then everybody else, but hey, that was a prime example of what all it takes is one woman to say something, and the rest of them, because everybody else is like, she did me too, girl, just now.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God.
We threw you under the bus. That's what that threw
it
you
backed
right
over
under
me and ran over me and backed over me again. But it's okay. Go. Okay, you were looking through Instagram.
I was, because, we're hearing about, there is plans for AC. The board meetings have been telling us for the past 2 years there's this progressive plan that's years in the making, and certain units a little bit at a time. And I was just looking to see if they posted something, because somebody told my wife that there was stuff all over Instagram about it, but I don't know anything, and it's not on their website. Complete side note, there is a mental health first aid certification course that employees of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice can elect to take. Elect. Should be required.
Girl, I feel like all them people need therapy. I told that recently to somebody who worked in the youth system. I said, until y'all's culture changes, again, this treatment that is so wonderful, this model, this is not the setting for it. Or incarceration's about survival. You can't process all that. I only was able to do that once I got home and I felt safe. Number one. Number two, if the staff are not well, they're not well. They get treated, and we've said this, like garbage too. So then they treat us badly. They're in bad health. Just think about all the guards we know.
I already know.
Really in bad health. They're sweating in the heat too. They've got just as many conditions and health conditions as we do, and they need mental health therapy.
Anybody in that environment, whether you're confined or getting a paycheck, you need mental health care for sure.
Now, I'm going to say something.
Go
Ready for
it.
this one? So I tweeted this too, but I'll talk about it in a different way. So there's an incentive dorm at Murray. Now, have you heard about this? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Ooh, it's got a washer and dryer, and the girls get a microwave, and they get all this that makes them feel in a more home-like setting, right? If you're a good girl, you get to be in the incentive dorm. It's an incentive. So essentially, and I talked to Diane a lot about this, because I never want to make the girls feel invalidated when they enjoy something, right? I don't want to be Debbie Downer to them all the time. Yes, honey, you enjoy it. I'm so happy for you. I'm glad. The problem is that you're saying that only women that have proven themselves to be good girls, right? And this feeds into this narrative with women. Well, if you're good and you behave, then you get to be treated more humanely. What in the fuck? Right? So that's my problem, number one. Number two, Marci, this was paid for and furnished by ministries. Lots of money. So we're doing that, but people need health care and air conditioning, and people drop dead of the heat, but we spent money on that. You allowed the ministry to spend money on that. But when ministries and other organizations have even actually offered to donate money to put in air conditioning, we won't do that. And also, our trans brothers got kicked out of that dorm. So what are these? I just can't think of anything useful in these settings that we have been incarcerated in, other than the community we built with each other. Right? But I feel like, well, we could build community with other women freely without trauma, right?
We were in that training, and not to cut you off, but I did cut you off, and I apologize. We were in that training, and the facilitator of the training was talking about her ancestors who were slaves, and how she tries to, that's one of her grounding mechanisms, is that she pictures herself back, like she travels back in time in her mind and tries to be in tune with her ancestors. And she said not only the bad stuff and the stuff that they endured, because that's overwhelmingly amount of horrific things that they endured, but she said, but I also know that they had joy and community, and I know that they laughed sometimes. And I think that no matter what oppressive conditions come from the outside, humanity is always going to find a way to come through.
Yes. Right.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, Viktor Frankl says it in Man's Search for Meaning. He says, meaning, when you find meaning in life, that's when people lose the will to live, they lose meaning, right? But if you never lose touch with meaning, you'll always find a way. Even in suffering, you can find meaning. He said, but hear me out. The most meaningful thing to do is not to have the suffering, right? So it's like, I appreciate the bonds that we had, but we would have been served better if we could have created these bonds and been allowed to create these bonds outside of that horrific setting.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
And it's not fair that we had to do that in there. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's not fair. We have a question about, what about the camps, like the trustee camps? Are they getting extra privileges?
No.
Like, are there ACs? And no, the answer is absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Let me tell you what trustees, you remember, baby, I used to say, well, I've got an aggravated charge, so they never going to try to give me my trustee. But I knew women that would get on psych meds just so they wouldn't be forced to be a trustee. Because all you're going to do is work harder and more.
Work like a dog.
The only privilege you're going to get is to go to the store more often, and all your visits are contact. What else are you getting? Because a lot of, like Mountain View, our trustee, we had a dorm. They weren't outside the gate. They lived in here with us.
Mhm.
There was no privilege.
Lane Murray too. In fact, the trustee dorm was behind an extra security gate. So you coming back in 110-degree weather outside carrying your commissary bags, you had to wait at 2 extra gates to get in the door. And I remember thinking to myself, this is privilege. This is the privilege of being a trustee. But I also remember the laws coming in looking for workers, because it was a mixed dorm. It had people that didn't necessarily have their trustee band, but had excellent disciplinary history, right? So it was the good dorm. And I'm in there, and for those of you that think I'm a goody two shoes, know that I wasn't always there. I would make myself down. I made my way down and made my way back up and down and back up. But anyways, I had my trustee band on at the beginning of my sentence, and the laws come in looking for workers. And my friend immediately she did her hand and slid her band off. And she's like, girl, you better hide that band. I said, what? She said, they're fixing to have you go out and they're fixing to work you like a dog. You better hide that band. If they see you with the yellow band, they're fixing to pull you. And so I'm like, I didn't, my band wouldn't come off. So I was like trying to hold it and hide it. And everybody was scattering, that people were going to their bed acting like they were asleep. Like that's how, but I also remember about having that band on. Anytime I have my yellow band on and I'm in the chow hall and I see my friend and I'm like, oh, you want to do that with that yellow band on? Oh, we got a yellow band doing this. And the first time that I caught a case for hugging that girl, I got a sex case for a hug, not an intimate hug. Hugging the top of someone's shoulders. I got a sex case. And I remember that lieutenant coming up, and Lieutenant Rollins, and she said, ooh, we got a yellow band with the sex case. Ooh, I can't wait to cut that yellow band off. And I remember when that band was off, I was like, good. I felt like it was a target.
It was.
Yeah.
It was, and they would convince you, again, a system rooted in slavery is that it's work will set you free.
Girl, they had us so brainwashed that we were fighting over what jobs we could get.
I can't.
We were getting mad at each other over what position on the damn field squad to work in the fields.
It's a psychological thing, right?
And it worked.
It is.
I was
And
in it.
that's what those places I loved when we met with our little parole work group at the TAVP office, several of us, and we watched a film Brother Rob had us watch. It was really interesting, sparked a lot of good conversation. And Jorge said, and one day maybe we'll have Jorge on here to talk about abolition, because he'll go hard. He'll go hard all the way.
And that is Jorge Ronaldo.
Renault.
I'm sorry, Jorge. He is the big Latino justice. Say it. Correct. Say his title so that I don't butcher it.
Yeah, he's the Texas director for the Latino Justice. It's a huge advocacy organization, and he's been in the fight a long time. Did a lot of time, and he's a character. We should have him on here sometime. He can articulate abolition better than anybody else I know, but and he talks about that. What does it mean to be accountable personally and collectively? And but he offered something really impactful, right? It was like when we say parole's not working, or the system's not, the parole system's not working, or it's not doing what it's supposed to do, or whatever. And Jorge reminds us, no, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. These systems were designed to do exactly what they are doing. So that's the wrong argument.
Keeping people oppressed.
It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Hey, Department of Corruption says we are at our hour.
Oh.
He says Toonch.
He said done. Oh, gotcha.
Y'all have been wonderful. Jerry, I see you, honey. I love you. Thank you for joining us. Y'all have been incredible tonight. It has been a really great discussion, Toonch. Thanks for the powerful insight. Any final thoughts?
Yes, I want to remind folks that me and Marci will be next Wednesday, we will be at the Free Her rally. I don't know how she wants to handle our social media for that. I don't know if we're going to go live. I don't know if we're going to just record and stream later. I don't know. I let her handle all of that because she's the master. She's the Jedi master there. I'm just there to look adorable. But be on the lookout, because that's what's going down next Wednesday.
Yeah, we will definitely have some footage of the Free Her concert. I'm going to be on a flight, so it's going to be pre-recorded for sure, because my flight is unless I'm confused, but I think it is, and I could be confused. But so next week, it will be about the Free Her conference rally. We're going to be having a lot to do around that, I think. Well, we'll just stay tuned, y'all. Y'all know we'll come with it. We're coming in hot no matter what it is. But
that's right.
Until next time, thank you guys for liking, sharing the live. Thank you so much for your conversations, your community, your loyalty. We appreciate you all. This is definitely our favorite hour of the week. We will be back here, not live, but Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Time on the Reckyard Women's Prison Podcast.
For hanging out with us on the Reckyard Women's Prison Podcast with Marci